Method number 2, macro focusing bellows. Macro focusing bellows are one of my favorite ways to adapt non-photographic lenses. They're very precise when it comes to focusing. They're lightweight, and they also are very good at taking close-up or macro photographs. If you compare them to, say, a focusing helicoid, they're not quite as rugged. And I tend to use them either handheld, and I generally for handheld prefer the smaller ones with the single rail. Or if I want to mount a larger lens or put them on a tripod, I will use one of the double-railed macro focusing bellows. And as you can see, they have tripod mounts on the bottom. Now, if you have a lens with a really long flange focal distance, there's probably nothing better to use than a macro focusing bellows, because you can get that lens quite distant from the digital sensor in your camera. So long flange focal distance, think bellows. Now, as far as the components of a bellows go, we talked earlier that there's a rail that kind of holds it all together. You have a focusing knob that adjusts the bellows back and forth, lengthens it or shortens it. Usually they're very high precision. On the other side, they have a clamp, so once you find focus, you can tighten the clamp and it holds the distance, focusing distance precisely. You also have a hole in the front of the bellows, and that is where you put the lens itself. This happens to be a top core front group that I mounted to this Ricoh bellows, and I had to glue it in. In fact, when I use bellows, in most cases, I glue with the super glue I talked about earlier in the ring section. I use the super glue to attach the lens to the front. Now, on the back side of your bellows, you have a camera mount. And these come in various flavors that will fit most cameras. And a lot of my bellows have an M42 mount on the back, M42 screw mount. And that enables me to use any number of M42 adapters. And I just screw them on the end of the bellows. And now I'm able to attach that bellows to any of the cameras that I have an M42 mount for. Now, when you buy one of these bellows, and as you can see, I have a number of them on the table and some behind me, I usually buy them used. I think you can still buy them new, but when I buy them used, I generally get them in pretty good shape for anywhere from 20 to 40, maybe 50 is the highest I've ever spent. That's US dollars. When I get them, I inspect them right away, and I want to make sure that it's got a real smooth focusing mechanism on it. The locking clamp works. And then I want to inspect inside, because the bellows itself is usually the first thing to fail. And I've bought bellows before that have pinholes or rips or tears in them. And while they can be repaired, it's kind of a lengthy process to replace a bellows. So look for light leaks when you buy a new bellows. As far as what bellows I like, generally you're going to probably be pretty happy if you get a bellows made by Lights Leica, Zeiss, Novaflex, or Pentax. The only bellows that I haven't had good luck with is Russian bellows. They don't seem to be made as well as the ones that I just mentioned. Now, the great thing about bellows is they come in various sizes, from extremely small, which are great if you're going to be hand-holding it, to medium-sized bellows, to extremely large bellows like this one. This is actually a medium format bellows made by Hasselblad. And I glued the lens, this large lens, I glued it to the front, and on the rear it has a little plate that slides in and out of this medium format bellows, and I just took the plate out and I glued a Pentax 6x7 to Pentax K adapter to it. And you could glue any adapter to the back end of this plate, or get a variety of these plates and just attach a variety of camera mounts. And then you simply slide the plate into place, and then you just attach the whole contraption to your camera just like you would any camera. And here's some pictures that I took with this particular lens and bellows, and I think you'll be kind of impressed with how they turned out. Here's another example of one that worked out pretty good for me. I took the front element, the front group of a old top-core lens that I was given, and I glued it onto the end of this Ricoh monorail bellows, and it moves back and forth pretty nicely. And when I mount this on this particular APS-C camera, you can see that from the pictures I've taken, it only takes macro pictures, real close-up photos. And the reason for that is because the camera I've mounted it on is a DSLR camera with a mirror, and that means I can only get the lens so close to the sensor. Now, if I were to instead mount this particular bellows and lens to a mirrorless camera, the end of the lens would be closer to the sensor, and instead of being just a macro lens like it is on this particular DSLR camera, on a mirrorless camera, it would take photos maybe not all the way out to infinity, but certainly out to maybe 30 or 40 yards away. Now, bellows, as you can tell, are a cheap and readily available method of adapting your Frankensteining your non-photographic lenses, and they are, as you can tell by the number of bellows I've got, one of my favorite methods of Frankensteining a lens.